let's talk about the dark side of the internet. Whether in your book reviews or social media or even an email. I wrote down a bunch of places on the internet where strangers have access to us more than they probably should, and it can really intrude on our creativity. So let's talk about some ways we can limit that and set some boundaries. Let's start with reviews on your book. Since no book is perfect, no matter how hard you work on it, there will always be somebody on the internet that doesn't like it. And I can prove this because if you go and look at any of your favorite authors, your absolute favorite book, you'll find a review of somebody who doesn't like it. It's because art is subjective. We cannot help this. And it does not mean that our work is bad. It just means that it's not for everybody, and that's okay. Problem though is that other people's opinions, even if it's not the same as your own and not the same as many of your fans and loyal readers, can still intrude on your mental health and affect your creativity in a really big way. So this is something where you're going to need to learn how to protect yourself, and every author is different, but I can tell you some of the things that I've done that have helped me. Every author is different, so some people are going to be really sensitive to this and other people might not be bothered as much, but honestly, as creatives, every single one of us deals with this at some point, and it's tough. So let's talk about ways that you can protect yourself from negative feedback, negative reviews. One of my favorite tips that a lot of authors do is to set a time limit on how long you're allowed to go and look at your reviews before or after a release. Some authors might only look at it up to release day, some might only do through release week, and then you stop looking. And the reason this is valuable is because those initial reviews tend to be from your kindest and most loyal fans who will give you the more positive feedback. It'll still be true, but it'll be from the people you know actually enjoy your books, the people that you intended to read this book who are going to be the most excited about the story naturally, versus people like a month or two down the road who just pick up your book at random, even though they don't even read your genre, and then they're like, this wasn't really my thing. Well, of course it wasn't. Another way that you can set boundaries or limits, whatever you want to call it, is to get a buffer person to read your reviews for you. Or you could call them a filter person. That might be a better word. So they kind of filter through the reviews to you that you can handle, and you've given them kind of guidelines on, like, share the 5 stars, let me know all the good stuff. If there's anything negative, maybe hold off for a month or two until I'm like past the new release feels, you know what I'm saying? Because sometimes it can really sting, and then after a few months it's like, oh no, I do see there's a little issue here, I can get better on that next time. So it's nice to have some constructive criticism from reviews if it's kind, if it's thoughtful, if you can learn something from it. But sometimes you just need a little space, because again, this is about protecting your creativity and your mental health so that you can keep writing more books. And if you have one of those little like review devils on your shoulder that's like, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, then you can't write a book with that in your ear. You know what I'm saying? Let's talk about the dark side of social media next. Where do I even begin? Social media can be draining for authors in so many ways. This is probably the biggest one that we deal with. Number 1, trying to be on all platforms. Number 2, trying to keep up with posting. Number 3, trying to keep up with direct messages and comments, especially as you grow and you get a lot. Number 4, getting tagged in negative reviews, and probably so many more. But I think the underlying issue with social media is how authors feel like we have to be on there, and because of that, we are constantly exposed. At any time, whenever you jump on a social media platform, you are exposed potentially to internet strangers who may or may not be kind. And that can be really tough and taxing on our mental health and on our creativity, obviously. Even if it's not directly related to our books and it's just like people wanting things from you and like 30 conversations going on in a single day, like that's not normal. People didn't used to do that. That's mentally taxing because it's just not normal. I don't know, honestly, it's been so many years since I haven't had this connection to the internet that it's hard even to remember what life used to be like. But I think this is so brand new still that people are still trying to figure out how to navigate it. But I have definitely picked up some tips, a lot actually, that I think will help you. So let's just kind of go through my whole list here. While the main thing that can set me back time-wise and creatively wise that's not a word, but whatever, is probably the direct messages and comments and just like the multiple conversations with people that I'm constantly trying to keep up with. I think it's also worth mentioning things like how many platforms you got to be on and how that pressure of trying to post every day and every once in a while being tagged in negative reviews or just being tagged in general. We'll get into that. Let's start with the trying to be on all platforms. Here's the thing. Social media management is literally a job. It's a career in our day and age because it is so incredibly time consuming. So for authors to think, oh, I can just do all the social medias and write my books, that's very naive of us. I've done this, I've been there, I still do this sometimes where it's like, I can figure out how to do it. I'm like, no. So right now, just to give you an example, I'm currently very focused on editing my book. So what I've told myself and tried to do is set a boundary where the book always comes first, and that is the task that must get done first. And if I meet my editing requirements for the day, then I can go on social media if there's time. So that's one of the boundaries that I personally set, just to give you an example. One of the biggest tips for how to navigate all the different social media platforms and still have time is to park on most of them, where you just have like, you set up a page and it's there, but don't feel like you have to actually be present there. Just set up, you know, your profile picture, a little description, and obviously your handle, and you're there, but you're not really there. You know what I'm saying? And another tip is that you can also use different apps. Sometimes things are connected. Like I think my Instagram posts to my Facebook, even though I haven't logged onto Facebook in months, and I hate Facebook, absolutely hate it. But I'm pretty sure it's posting for me over there, and it seems like I'm active over there. Or if you're like, well, I just don't know which account I should be on, sometimes the content can overlap a little bit. So for example, I love Instagram. That's my favorite place to be. So I will make reels on that platform, but I can then cross post them to TikTok and to YouTube Shorts. So those are my kind of three main platforms, but honestly, that's a lot for me. And so what I have found is that I really can only juggle one or two if I want to stay up to date with my books and make them the priority. So in other words, I guess my next tip is it's okay to drop them now and then. It's okay to take breaks. I took a YouTube break where I didn't edit any videos for a month. And this applies to posting as well, but taking breaks can be very good for your mental health, and you don't have to apologize. You don't even have to tell people, hey, I'm back. I'm sorry I was gone so long. It's not a big deal. People get it. Breaks are normal. Let's normalize them by not making a big deal out of them. Like I just took a YouTube break. Every once in a while, I just dip out and stop looking at TikTok for a few weeks, and that's okay. You are not usually getting paid to be on most of these platforms. You do not owe them your time in any way, shape, or form. And I know there's that constant fear of, but if I am not on social media, will my books sell? A break is short. It's not permanent. You can come back and your books will pick up again, and potentially they'll keep selling while you're gone, honestly. Sometimes it's a fear that we have that isn't actually true. Okay, I'm jumping around in my notes, but when it comes to keeping up with posting, sometimes it's okay to also just step back and limit how many times you post. Somebody might say you have to do this much, like once a day, or 3 to 5 times a day if it's TikTok, and you are allowed to say no. That's not for me. My limit is, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a week on Instagram. Boom, done. Or another healthy way to do it might be, I am going to see how many posts I can come up with in an hour on Monday, and then that's what I'll have for the week. And if it's not a lot, it's okay. And if it's like 10 posts, awesome. But you just don't pressure yourself to go beyond that time, and then the rest of the week you give that hour to your books. Okay, next is negative reviews and just being tagged by people on the internet in general. It can be incredibly frustrating because you feel like you have no way to shield yourself from this. There's no way to stop people, right? Or is there? There's actually a way to stop people from tagging you. You can go into your settings on pretty much every social media account and make it so they can't tag you. You just have to do some Google research, figure it out. I actually did this on Instagram when I was so incredibly sick of being tagged in other people's book posts. So like, what's a good example? Like somebody was advertising their own book, but they tagged me so I would see it. That was happening constantly, like every day, twice a day, 3 times a day. I was getting tagged in something that I had nothing to do with. It wasn't a review of my book. It was just, look at me, look at me, look at me. And I was so incredibly sick of it. Or like a quote from their book, or even stuff that wasn't book related, and I was somehow getting tagged, and I had had enough. So I actually just removed their access to me, and it was amazing. It felt so freeing. I was like, nobody is tagging me. I feel so great. The downside to this is that I forgot about that, and it came up to a book release, and readers were like, why can't I tag you in this post about your book? It was a really nice post. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I took that down so that they could tag me in the nice posts, the ones that you do want to have. And so it's something to just keep in mind that you might want to do this for temporary breaks and then bring it back so people can tag you. Just if you need it for your mental health, it's good to know that you have it in your back pocket. All right, last but not least, let's talk about direct messages. And again, maybe comments to a lesser extent, but usually it's the direct messages that are really hard for me. And it's usually not about my book at all. It's usually people just wanting something from me. And so I assume that literally everybody on social media has this to some extent, even if it's those spam accounts that are like, do you want to buy my product? Do you want to work with me? Do you want this? I'm sure you've dealt with that. Comment below if you've had those obnoxious messages from, like, I don't even know if they're bots or real people. But as you grow, as you get bigger, you can expect that you will also get nice readers and just long messages that you want to answer, and it's good to answer, but it does take time and energy to type out a thoughtful response, and that does pull away from your creative energy and your time. Or it could be negative people who are not so nice, and I've had some of these instances as well. Or the most common is what I would call, I guess, neutral but disrespectful. And so this might be more because I have a YouTube channel, but I honestly think other authors get this as well. Let me know if you don't have a YouTube channel or any writing advice type stuff, but you've still gotten comments like this, because I think people just ask authors, can you read my book? Like, you're an author, so can you read my book? Or can you help me with this? Can you write this for me? Can you tell me what to do? How do I do this? And it's like stuff that you could type into Google, and it's very, very frustrating. And of course, certain social media platforms are worse in this area than others as well. So for example, here on YouTube, you guys are really smart. You don't usually ask me dumb questions. You usually ask really smart, thoughtful questions. And of course, being a writing channel, it's good to get questions and know what types of videos you guys would like in the future. But I've heard and somewhat experienced, like TikTok in particular, is where apparently the dumb comments happen to be. And so it'll be people like, where can I find your book? Even though you said it's The Stolen Kingdom, available on all vendors, Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, Google Play. You've said the whole spiel, and they still go, where can I find your book? Or who's the author? Even though it's like, it's me. I said it was me. These sorts of things don't really make a big dent in your mental health or creativity by themselves. It's when you get a flood of them that they just wash over you, and you're like, I can't take another, like the 100th comment is too much. I'm done. I need to exit social media. So here's some tips that I have for you. Coming back to the one I already said, take breaks, because when you can feel that breaking point, I guess you could say, starting to come, or maybe you're just like, this is too much. I have 20 messages that I want to answer because they're nice, they're kind people, and I want to help them, but I just can't. I don't have time right now. I have like a major deadline that I have to do. Take a break from social media. Nobody's judging you. There is no guilt, no shame. If you need it, do what you need to do. Even if it's just a day or two, that can really, really help. But honestly, if you're really feeling that sensitivity to social media, sometimes a week or more can be really, really helpful. Also, did you know that on most social media, you can actually block certain words? Here on YouTube, on Instagram, I believe also on TikTok, and I think Facebook, Twitter, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you can Google it and find out for sure, but you can almost always block certain words and obviously block certain people as well. And I know there used to be a lot of people who were like, oh, authors should never block. That's terrible. It's not terrible. You don't have to answer anybody. Nobody's paying you unless you have a coaching program or something. You don't owe anybody anything. I'm sorry, but you don't. As an author, you could be fully off the internet if you wanted to be, and that's okay, because you don't owe the internet and total strangers anything. I know I was talking about blocking words. If you find that you're getting a very consistent type of message, like there's this obnoxious spam company that's trying to steal authors' money right now going around called PR Mogul or something like that, and I get a message from them daily, so you can actually block certain words that they use if those messages are exact repeats of each other, and then you don't see them. So that's helpful, but then there's still so many messages that you can't, I guess, expect what they're gonna say, and so they're just flooding your inbox. And again, this might be something that hasn't happened so much for you yet. It might just be here and there, or you might have a larger account and it's like daily you get 10, 20, 30 messages. I've had instances like this. It really depends on the day, but it was probably a few years ago that I gave myself permission to stop answering everybody. And this was very, very hard for me. I am a people pleaser. I want to help people when they ask me for help. And I don't know, again, this might be more because I have a YouTube channel, so let me know if you can relate to this or if this is just me, but I found that it was just constant questions and people saying, can you read my book? And can you help me with this problem? You have expertise and I don't. Can I ask your advice? And I totally get that. I totally get where it's coming from. Okay, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that when you imagine getting 20 of those in one day, or even 5, and the time that it takes to sit down, thoughtfully craft out a really kind and helpful response. 5 minutes goes by, you've done one. 5 minutes goes by, you've done another. 5 minutes goes by, you've talked to a third person. 4 minutes goes by, you had to go find a link and send it to them, and then you're like, oh, also here's this tip. 5-10 minutes go by and you see how it's going. It's not good. So I only have 2.5 hours to 3 hours a day when Zion is napping to work. And by the end of the day, I don't even want to work anymore. When he goes to bed, I'm like, I need to watch a TV show or read a book. I can't. So those 2.5 hours I have learned to guard so carefully, and I catch myself almost always. I start looking at social media and I want to answer, but I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like 5 new messages. What do I do? What do I do? I have to work on my own books. I only have a very limited amount of time. So setting boundaries for yourself and reminding yourself that this is a stranger on the internet. You know, if you get stopped by a person on the street, you might help them if you have time. But if you are rushing to an appointment, you might be like, I'm so sorry. Can you ask somebody else? Like, just to put it in perspective, if you are walking by one person on the street and they're like, hey, do you know the directions to this place and that place? You might be like, oh yeah, sure, it's this way. But if you were stopped by a mob of 20 people and you're like, also, I'm on my way to a very important appointment, I need to get there, you might be like, hey guys, I'm so sorry, I gotta go. You don't have to talk to everybody. I know that's hard to hear. I know it's weird to hear, because for a lot of us, it starts out in a slow trickle. I know it did for me. I started out Instagram at 0, just like everybody else. And so every single message, I was like, yay, somebody's talking to me. I'm so glad you like my book. And I still feel that way. The feelings, well, except for the negative comments, but in the nicer comments and the messages, I still want to talk to everybody. But what I've realized is I have to set a boundary. Like, I am giving myself 5 minutes. Let's see how many people I can connect with and try to help. And then I have to go write my book, and that's okay. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about emails. Emails can be extremely rough on your mental health and creativity as you grow in particular, or if you have put your email out in a lot of public places, because this is the most difficult place to have a filter, honestly. So if you are using your email for author stuff, but also for like Amazon orders and talking to family and you name it, then you have no way of filtering out. You are just checking your email to see, you know, oh, is my book order coming? Or am I going to go to this event, or whatever the case may be? And up pops another unexpected email from, I don't know, angry reader, or just somebody being like, can you read my book? Or just the constant request. It's very much, for me at least, a place where I get request after request after request after request, and it's like, can you help me? Can you help me? Can you help me? Grab. And it's just like, ah. It gets to you real fast, because you're not expecting it there. I'm not sure. So you might have already guessed where I'm going with this, but a great way to set boundaries is to make an author only account separate from other things. One where you send people with the requests, and the one that you make more public, and then the one that you actually give out to, I don't know, people who want to work with you, like a PR type email. Like, this is what I would give to a bookstore if I want to talk about doing a signing with them and things like that. You might be thinking, this is not a big deal, I'll be fine. This is, once again, just like social media, something that grows along with you as you grow as an author. So you might find that you just get one email a month that's a little awkward, a little uncomfortable. And emails in particular, because the person took more time to type it out and send it to you, and it's usually a lot longer because there's no word limit on email, then they take a lot more time to answer and to be thoughtful. And so I used to type out these long responses. It could take me 15 minutes to craft an email back. I have found that that is just not doable. Once again, you already know how much time I have. Imagine me trying to answer 10 emails in my 2.5 hours. I'm done. There's no time left for the book, because it takes me a long time to get in the headspace to write anyway. And not only that, but if I've had so many people asking me, how do I do this? What would you recommend for dialogue? What would you recommend for how I publish on this company? And I've spent all my creative energy on them. I don't have any left for myself, if that makes sense. All right, so boundaries. Before we talk about boundaries and limits, I want to show you, there is an account, I think it's on TikTok. Here we go. This author right here, I just randomly came across her from one of her stories about a disgruntled reader named Scott. And she has actually grown really famous for this particular thing, among other things. She's very famous for other reasons, but she has made this into a very funny part of her branding, where she consistently does videos about this guy, Scott, who apparently sent her 6 emails, not 1 or 2, but 6 emails about how much he hated her book and how she should stop writing, even though she is a New York Times best-selling author. Blows my mind that people can be like that. But at the same time, I can actually relate to that because I've experienced, not always in emails, more often here in YouTube and comments, people who say things like that to me as well. It's very inappropriate, but you don't really have a way to stop them if they're trying to get to you, do you? Actually, we do. There are a couple things that I have done to protect my mental health around emails as well, and also in YouTube comments. Just like in social media, you can actually have blocked words in your email as well. Now, I haven't tried all the different email platforms out there, but the ones that I do have all let you block words if you want to, just like social media, just like YouTube comments. You can block any words that you want. So maybe you want to block all swear words and you're like, anybody who comes at me swearing is probably not somebody I want to hear from, and that's fine. Or you could block again like hate, or I wouldn't block review because maybe it's a happy review, but things like that. You might have to get a few of these not so happy emails before you start to see which words you want to block, but at least you can do that and protect yourself going forward. But the biggest thing when it comes to emails for me was setting boundaries, because I used to have my email everywhere. It was in my books, it was on my website, it was on social media, like all of them in multiple places. I'd be like, here, email me anytime. I don't do that anymore. In fact, it was again probably about 4 years ago or so, my YouTube had started to grow. People were starting to get mean. I feel like I haven't had this in a long time since I started protecting myself and putting some boundaries around myself. Things have changed, but there was a time when I was dealing with internet trolls constantly. I actually had a friend group, an author group, where we specifically vented and sent each other screenshots to be like, look what they said today. And I guess that's my last piece of advice that I didn't even think to mention, but it's very worth mentioning, is make sure you actually get outside perspective that is healthy. So when you're getting those negative perspectives or just the obnoxious perspectives, I guarantee you every author at some point, you will get some negative feedback. You will get some things that just set you back and you're like, I don't feel good about myself. How can I create? It's again, that crappy little negative reviewer on your shoulder going, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck. And you can't get past it. One of the best things you can do is get people in your life to remind you that that's not true, to speak the actual truth into your life. That could be developing friendships with other writers who understand and who have gone through it and who can talk to you, and you can do what I did where I'm like, screenshot, this is what so-and-so said, and then my great author friends would go, that is so stupid. You know that's not true, right? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. Like, obviously that's not true. And in a similar fashion, a lot of authors actually create a folder or some little space on their desktop computer, or maybe even a printout on their wall, where they gather up the really, really positive reviews of their book, the things that their beta readers said, the things that the early reviewers said, or you name it, good things, good truths about their books and about themselves as a writer that they can look at when they're seeing those negative reviews. Like, for example, I don't write epic fantasy, so I don't write really in-depth world building. So some people get really frustrated. I can go to my folder of good reviews where a surprising number of people, more people than the bad reviews, are actually saying, I love the world building. I love how immersive it is, how it relates to the characters, how it's brought up when it's relevant, and how it's memorable, and how it's different. And I love the world building. I've talked about this before because it used to blow my mind. It still does sometimes blow my mind that you can get the exact same thing. One person loves it, one person hates it. But the thing about that is you have to turn your focus from the hater to the person who is your fan, who loves your work, who wants to read your books, and make that your focus. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but I hope this talk about how to set limits and how to set boundaries gave you some ideas. Let me know which ones your favorites were in the comments. Definitely give it a thumbs up if it helped you, and subscribe if you're not. And I will talk to you guys again very soon. Bye.